Okay, we're going to be hot in 15 seconds, people. Stand by. Queue open.
Talent, check your spot.
Audio up.
Clear the set, everybody.
Stand by camera 3. Stand by camera 1. Camera 4, check your focus.
Carol, make sure the phone guests are standing by.
Stand by camera 2.
Okay, Don, we're ready out here.
Okay, thanks. Let's rock and roll. Count them in.
10, 9,
Here we go.
8,
Flying graphic.
7,
Camera 2,
6,
I'm going to be coming to you
5,
first. Stand by to cue mark.
4, 3, 2.
And cue mark.
Hello, I'm Mark Crutcher, President of Life Dynamics. I want to welcome you to Life Talk for July 2014. As always, Alan Ackles is going to get us started with this month's Life Talk news. Alan?
All right, thank you, Mark. The closing of American abortion clinics continued this month, with Planned Parenthood shutting down in Creston, Iowa, Red Oak, Iowa, Hays, Kansas, Clackamas, Oregon, Gresham, Oregon, and Salmon Creek, Washington. They also announced that their facility in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin will be closed in September. And in Texas, the only abortion clinic in Corpus Christi has gone out of business after being unable to comply with new state-mandated health and safety codes. Since these updated standards went into effect, over half the abortion clinics in Texas have closed. Meanwhile, the Attorney General of Ohio has ordered the last abortion clinic in Toledo to close, citing its lack of an emergency transfer agreement with any local hospital. The owners are fighting the order, claiming that their transfer agreement with a hospital more than 50 miles away is sufficient. The Attorney General says that this does not satisfy the requirements of state law and jeopardizes patient safety. In Texas, a lawsuit against Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast brought by a former employee claims that the organization defrauded state and federal taxpayers for more than 10 years. The charges relate to Medicaid payments for procedures on incarcerated teenagers that were either unnecessary or not even performed. Planned Parenthood attempted to have the case dismissed, but a judge ruled that there was reasonable evidence that they had knowingly filed the fraudulent claims. In July of 2013, Planned Parenthood paid out $4.3 million to settle a similar lawsuit filed by another employee. And in 2012, the Alliance Defending Freedom issued a report alleging that the organization had committed fraud in excess of $88 million. Well, a Georgia court has sentenced abortionist Charles Rossman to 5 years in prison and 5 years on probation. Charges were brought against him for a 2003 incident in which Rossman gave a handful of abortion pills to a 23-year-old woman who was 30 weeks pregnant. He then locked her in the room and left. After the woman went into labor, she panicked and called 911. And when police kicked in the door to Rossman's office, they found her giving birth to a baby boy. Facing criminal charges, Rossman fled the country and remained at large until he was captured in Germany earlier this year. Pro-choice violence continued to be seen in several states this month. In Ohio, 36-year-old Brian Schultz has been sentenced to 12 months in prison for beating his teenage daughter after she refused his demand that she have an abortion. The girl's mother also participated in the beating, but charges were dropped against her so she could care for her other children. Testimony showed that the victim shielded her unborn child during the attack, and in December of 2013, she gave birth to a healthy and full-term baby. In Pennsylvania, police say that the 22-year-old son of abortionist Kermit Gosnell was shot several times while burglarizing a home in West Philadelphia. Baron Alexander, who dropped his father's last name, is facing several felony charges related to the incident once he is released from the hospital. Kermit Gosnell was given life without parole for murdering 3 babies born alive at his abortion clinic. It is also known that he killed at least 1 adult. Mississippi Congressman Steve Palazzo has introduced federal legislation that would prohibit wrongful birth lawsuits against physicians. The suits are generally brought by parents of disabled children who say they would have aborted their children if they'd been informed about the disabilities. Life Dynamics President Mark Crutcher said that this legislation is long overdue, saying, quote, "It shows how far legalized abortion has destroyed the moral foundation of our country when parents would go into a courtroom and argue that their own child should have never been born," unquote. And finally, according to government documents, during the 2012-2013 fiscal year, Planned Parenthood brought in more than $540 million in government funding. During that time, the organization's president, Cecile Richards, made over $500,000, and the 12-member executive team's combined income was almost $4 million. In addition, documents also show that Planned Parenthood paid over $1 million for telemarketing services to the Service Employees International Union, where her husband, Kirk Adams, is the international executive vice president. Alan Ackles here for Life Talk News. You can get daily news updates by logging on to prolifeamerica.com. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Alan. All right, got a lot of stuff to get to today. First off, Troy's not here. We told everybody last month, like I said, it's always herding cats. This cat we couldn't herd this month. But Leroy Dodd from the Life Dynamic staff is here to
It's good to be back.
Nice to have you back here with us. And of course, Destiny De La Rosa from New Wave Feminist, and Father Frank Pavone from Priest for Life flew in from New York. And man, are his arms tired from flying in?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And then, of course, my trusty sidekick, Renee Hobbs, who actually runs things at Life Dynamics, or
Hello.
so she thinks. But anyway, we got a lot of stuff to get to, so we're going to get right to it. First thing I want to bring up, though, is today is a very special day. As y'all know, it's my daughter's birthday.
That's right.
Happy birthday to Sheila.
And, it's so weird. I still get these calls from people every once in a while when they see her or hear us talking about her. And she's in grad school now. I'm going to be getting her master's in December. And they'll say, it seems like yesterday when she was 2 years old and you were bringing her, or 1 year old, or 6 months old, and you were bringing her to your seminars. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it does seem like yesterday. As you know, your kids, we've talked about that before.
Yes.
They
grow so fast.
They grow so fast, and they're in and out. But anyway, so it's Sheila's birthday today. We've got a lot of neat things. I want to bring up some stuff that's involved, related to things that Life Dynamics is doing. First off, we've been talking in the last couple of shows about the People of Choice website. We finally got it up, completed, and it's getting a lot of attention. And the pro-aborts, of course, are hating it, as you might imagine. Everybody here, obviously, you helped us put it together, but you've seen it, and obviously you have, and Leroy was involved in the creative.
In some of the early stages of trying to get some of this material ready to go up, I couldn't even take it. It's just you can't believe what some of these people are saying and doing, and it's unbelievable.
Right.
And we knew that shock factor was going to draw a lot of attention, and we're starting to see that now.
Mm-hmm. And the pro-aborts are not liking it. Their comments.
Yeah, they're pretty nasty. And my argument with you, it's your people.
Yeah,
that's right.
If you don't want this stuff to be seen by the public, then don't do it.
The argument isn't with us; it's with these people that are showing.
But we think it's important for people to understand. I've had this discussion with both you, Renee, and with Leroy. When y'all first came here, your perception of what this battle was like is totally different than what it is. As y'all know, when you're in it every day, it takes on a whole different flavor. Mm-hmm. And part of that is understanding the nature of the people that you're going up against. And because the media is on the side of these people, they don't expose this stuff.
Right.
And so that's why we did this People of Choice website, because I guarantee you cannot show what these people are like and not have that reflect on the abortion issue itself.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It makes a statement about it when you say these are the kind of people that advocate this position. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to keep on doing it, and they can like it or not like it. We don't really care whether they like it or not. And we've got, we introduced it originally with just a few pages because we were loading up the material. Now we've got about 46 pages or something like that, and we're
lots of pages.
Lots, and we're adding new stuff.
We are.
And it's pretty nasty. But anyway, also we're updating the Bikers for Life website. We're changing a little approach that we're using with the Bikers for Life, and it's going to be changed here in the next day or so. We got the final proof on that yesterday. It's not changing a tremendous amount, but it's changing.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, it does. And we've got a lot of things going on with Bikers for Life. As a matter of fact, we're trying to get the bikers to hook up with the mainstream pro-life movement, the sidewalk counselors and crisis pregnancy centers and so forth. And we've got a situation up in Illinois, and we're joined right now by Kelly Gorsky. Hello, Kelly.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it is my pleasure. Now, you're with
We're with Waterleaf in Aurora.
Waterleaf Crisis Pregnancy Center there?
Correct.
And that's part of the St. Elizabeth Satan Parish?
Some of us are parishioners there, but we are not affiliated with any parish, although most of us are Catholic and are in a parish. We kind of represent all area parishes. Now,
I understand that you guys have hooked up with the bikers up there, and you guys contacted us about some directions and ideas for that, and we visited with you. And I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the man that you're dealing with there from the biker community.
Well, there's a couple. Jack Amberg and Joe Murphy are two bikers. Heidi Moss is also a biker. They all came to me and said, we have this fantastic idea, and very unusual. At least around here, we don't have a lot of biker events for crisis pregnancy centers. In fact, that's the only one I know about.
Right.
So we're really excited to try this new way of reaching a new group of people.
Right. And they were, when we had that conversation with you originally, they're totally committed, just like the bikers that we've seen, that we've had here. We've talked about this before, and you've now had this experience. And even in Janet, your assistant's own family.
Exactly.
Down in Florida, they contacted us, and we're getting a lot of really positive feedback on this biker deal. But what's going to happen up there in Illinois, Kelly? What's going on with you guys?
So on Saturday, July 26th, we're having our first annual Ride for Life. It begins with a bike blessing at St. Elizabeth Seton in Naperville, which is at 87th and Naper. It's at 10 o'clock. And then the kickstands are up at 10:30. They will be traveling over 70 miles kind of throughout the area to visiting 4 parishes. They'll make a stop at Waterleaf, and then we'll follow up at Fox and Hound with a big party on Route 59 in Aurora. So people are welcome to join at any one of those spots. I know that not everyone's a rider. They can always come to the event at Fox and Hound or at Waterleaf as well. All the details are on our website at waterleafwc.org. The full route's posted there, as well as all the details.
Well, good. And you promised me that you would get us a lot of video so we could show it on Live Talk.
We are. You were super generous, and were willing to work with us to give us some things that we'll be giving out for Bikers for Life. We've got some great merchandise. We love your logo. In fact, that motivated us to go get our own logo for the Ride for Life. And
good.
We're thrilled with how it turned out. We said, kind of look at Bikers for Life and what they did, and so we're really excited about it.
Yeah, that Bike Parts Eagle has really created has a lot of stir. It's gotten people's fascination or something. People are fascinated by that logo. It's very
cool.
It is.
It portrays the coolness of biking, but the beauty of life as well.
Exactly. Well, listen, thank you for what you're doing, and keep us posted on how this is going, and we'll be bringing people the video from your event and hoping that they'll, and we do know there are other people around the country that are looking at this same sort of thing. So
thanks so much. We appreciate your support.
Well, thank you, Kelly, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Mark.
Take care. Bye-bye. Anyway, we got that going, and we got other things with other people doing things with Bikers for Life, and like I said, we've changed our approach to Bikers for Life here over the last month or so, and I think it's going to be a much smoother deal. I think it's going to be much better than what we originally. And it's a learning process. I mean, this is a new area that we're going into, but it's really capturing people's imaginations, and we're seeing now. We got a thing the other day from a priest who just bought a Harley. Did you see that?
No.
Okay, I can't remember what it was, but we got an email or a fax or something the other day and showed him he just bought a new Sportster, and he's getting involved in the biker community. And so anyway.
Mark, I think the pro-lifers are just as excited about this than the bikers are. I mean, are as excited about it as the bikers are. Because, I mean, we all have a mutual interest here. And, if you look at the biker community, they've always kind of had this tough image, but they've always been passionate about the vulnerable and women and children. Right. And that's one of the key elements of the pro-life movement. And so these two groups of individuals coming together, I think it creates a lot of excitement.
We've also had some neat things happen on the MAFA 21 website. Just to give an update on that, we've got another 25,000 MAFAs ordered. When we started this project, Carol and I and a few others sat in a room and talked about what we thought we could do with it. We thought at the time that we would probably be able to put out 10,000 MAFAs. We thought that would be a goal that was reasonable, and we could attain that goal, and that's what we were kind of shooting for. We just ordered another 25,000, and we should have those, next day or so?
We should.
Yep. And with that order, we've already put out over 150,000. We don't really know exactly how many. We've purchased 150,000, but there was a mix-up on the order at one point, and the company that makes them gave us a whole bunch of free ones. So I think they gave us about 20,000 free ones. So we've probably put out around 170,000, And I was contacted by Walter Hoy the other day, who's really pushing Maafa, and we supply him, keep him supplied with them. And he asked me how many we'd put out, and I told him, well, we're over 150,000 now, and we're out, and we've got another 25,000 ordered. And he said, well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. He said, because I can tell you that, he said, we've put them out there where one Maafa has been seen by hundreds of people. And then we've had all these, and we've also got it online. If people don't want to buy one, they can just watch it for free. And he says, I think if you've put out 150,000 DVDs, he said, I guarantee you've got at least 10 times that many people who've watched it. And so it's making an impact.
And Mark, we just did Alveda King on our team at Priests for Life. Just completed a report on the African American outreach that she's been doing with us for the last decade. And of course, Maafa 21 features prominently in that report as a factor in really awakening our country, not just the black community, but everybody, to the fact that, hey, this really is genocide.
This was eugenics. This was about, it had nothing to do with women's rights. It had nothing to do with reproductive choice or freedom or any of that nonsense. Those are sales tactics. Those are sales pitches. It was about eugenics. That was the motivation behind the legalization of abortion. And I still say this, if slavery had never existed, Planned Parenthood wouldn't exist today. This is a response to the end of slavery. And we in Maafa 21, we take it backwards and we show you all the steps. We connect all the dots. And when you first say things like that to people, they think you're nuts. But then if you sit and watch it, you think, well, okay, that's the way that happened. And then, yes, I remember that happening. And then that's what happened there. And you hear all the stuff that we found behind the scenes. It's clear that the impetus behind the legalization of abortion was eugenics. It had nothing to do with any of this other nonsense.
And the African American group, they are really waking up to it.
Right, they are.
They're breaking off into different groups.
Well, Maafa 21 is such a powerful tool. The way it was laid out, like you said, from point A all the way throughout the end of the film, it just gives you straight facts about what happened and lays it out in such a way that you can't deny the truth. And that draws people in, and that's one of the key things that drew me into the pro-life movement. And I think, when you look at it from the context that this is not history, this is something that's happening right now, right here today.
Yes.
I think that makes people, want to get more involved, and it's drawn a lot of people into the movement.
Yeah. And building on that, we really have to strategize about this and join together with all of our black brothers and sisters in talking about where do we go from here. I mean, this has ignited an awareness. This has ignited a fire. Alveda King's been working with us. Arnold Culbreth works with Life Issues Institute. Johnny Hunter, our good friend, has been, at the forefront of this for the longest time. And you got various people, in various mainstream pro-life organizations that are focusing on black outreach. And then, of course, now there's the National Black Pro-Life Coalition that has coalesced out of that. And we had the Freedom Rides back in 2010, again, largely inspired by this new awareness. But now what I notice happening is that we've got this growing concern within the black community that, hey, we've really been fooled on this. We've been asleep. And so now it's like, yeah, we got to do something about abortion. This is worse than we thought. It's destroying us. But then they run right up against the wall of the political loyalties that exist with the Democratic Party and all the pro-abortion activism that is in that party. And so now there's a fork in the road that they're facing, many of these leaders. They're worried and they're troubled on the inside, but now the challenge is, when are they going to bring it out on the outside? When are they going to stand up in front of a pulpit, stand up in front of a microphone, have a press conference, or go into the office of some pro-abort political leader and say, enough is enough? We're not going to be loyal to you anymore if you're going to continue to be loyal to the abortion industry.
Right, exactly.
And that's the transition now that is very challenging for them. But we've got to find a way to come around them and say, there's no other choice. We've got to break some loyalties here,
Right.
in order to keep our loyalty not only with the unborn, but with the black community.
But let me give you some encouragement on that, because you're exactly right. And we talked about that very issue when we started Maafa.
That's right.
And said this was going to be one of the things, I think you and I talked about, this was going to be one of the roadblocks that we had. But I want to point out something to you. The roadblock that we have with the black community is exactly the same roadblock that to a large extent existed in the Catholic community. Because if you go back into the 1950s and 60s, one of the most loyal Democratic voting blocks in America was the Catholic community.
That's right.
Overwhelmingly voted Democrat.
Right.
And a very large percentage, and you know this better than I do, a very large percentage of Catholic voters today who vote pro-life or vote Republican would go back to the Democratic Party in a blur if it were not for the abortion
For
issue.
the abortion issue, exactly.
Right.
That's right.
And so there came a point within the Catholic community where they said, okay, our loyalties, because we're basically pro-union and we're for social justice and all these other programs that the Democrats push and the Republicans fight against. However, there comes a point at which you have to say the protection of the innocent human life has to outweigh those things.
Yeah.
And they slowly kind of came to that realization. And so we already have a model for the fact that this can work, that this can happen. Right. But it's not going to happen overnight. And this was one of the things that I was arguing about, and I had a discussion about this with you when you first came here, that there were so many people who were saying, well, how are we going to get these blacks to quit voting Democrat? And this has got to happen right now. Well, it's not going to happen right now. And it's like when you get fat and you need to lose weight. Well, you didn't get fat overnight. You're not going to lose weight overnight.
Right.
And it takes a while. You have to be persistent. You have to stay at it. And so we can take some comfort though if we just look at the black community as exactly the same as the Catholic community was, let's say in 1965, where it was overwhelmingly Democrat. And, you know, it really, if you think about it for a minute, Father Frank, if you look at the statistics on it, it wasn't until Ronald Reagan became president that Catholics started going over.
Yeah, that shift started to happen.
And
right.
saying, yeah, we're pro-union, and we perceive the Republicans to be anti-union, whether that's true or not, that was the perception. However, we can't ignore this abortion thing anymore. And you started having Catholic bishops and the Pope coming out saying, you know, this is not just another issue. And then people like you, I mean, I've heard you say this a million times.
Yeah.
You cannot see abortion as just an issue. You cannot see it that way.
Right, that's right.
And so that's what we're going to have to get. That's the message we have to deliver into the black community.
In the black community, right.
Well, you know, I've always said that, you know, the one thing that has motivated eugenics was race. And the one thing that we see that's demobilizing the black community is race also. And so they're targeting the black race with eugenics and abortion and things of that sort. But blacks are focused on race so much to where we're not mobilizing and properly responding to what we see happening. But as the message spreads, it gets more and more embedded within my generation. Because what we've seen, Mark, I think, is that a lot of the people who called on the Marfa at the beginning, a lot of them knew some of the facts, but Marfa 21 kind of brought it all together. Well, my generation, we've known absolutely nothing about this, and it's just a shock value there, and we want to do something. And so sometimes if you got to overlook race and this blind loyalty to certain political parties to see justice, that's what we're going to start to see build in my generation.
Yeah. Well, again, that's what happened in the Catholic community.
That's right.
So we know it can happen.
Well, I would say Maafa has the power that it's not just about, I think it supersedes even political parties. I think it goes beyond that, and it becomes a change in culture. And if we're working for a culture of life, like, could you even imagine the day that the Republican and Democratic Party could both be pro-life? I mean, it's not even a matter of just winning them over to our side, but if people start to realize that we are talking about something so much larger than, you know, platforms, we are talking about life and death here. How amazing would that be if you had two parties that were both pro-life?
Well, I think that's the part of Destiny that scares the life out of the pro-aborts. That's what scares them so badly, because I think they recognize that if when people start waking up, the Catholic community's already done it. If the black community starts waking up and the Democrats wind up losing their two most loyal core constituency groups, they start losing them. They'll
have to become pro-life.
And I think there's a bunch of pro-life Democrats out there who just keep their mouth shut, don't run for office because they think, well, we hadn't got a chance. But if all of a sudden people are standing up saying, I'm not voting for you if you're pro-abortion, you support legalized abortion, I'm out. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, Druid, whatever you are, I don't care. I'm not voting for you. Then you'll start seeing some of these pro-life Democrats come forward, and things will change. By the way, we got an email here from this man's in Milwaukee, and they passed out, they had 30 people show up to pass out 3,000 Maafas door to door in a minority community up there. And they passed out 1,300 on Thursday alone at the Milwaukee Juneteenth Festival. and he says hearts and minds are being changed, and they, we're starting now to see more and more people that are buying them caseloads. We don't really sell that many Ma'afas anymore, onesies and twosies. They're buying them 50, 100, 1,000. This person that financed this deal has bought between 7,000 and 8,000 by himself.
Mark, we should also point out, and this is a good motive too for people to get Ma'afa and watch it again. Even if you watch it once, you can't just watch it once. You got to watch this thing repeatedly. July the 2nd is, and as this Life Talk comes out, it'll be starting around that time, the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act.
Right.
And this, of course, was landmark legislation in the United States. And Alveda and our African American outreach at Priests for Life are really focusing on bringing people's attention to the fact that on the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act, it's time to recommit ourselves now to expanding those civil rights to include the unborn. And it's a perfect time throughout the month of July to challenge those who are celebrating and will rightfully be celebrating the advances that the Civil Rights Act brought about 50 years ago, to commit themselves to be consistent and say, well, what about the civil rights of the baby? Let's start really focusing on that in a consistent way.
I think once you start tying the similarities together, that what are we doing to these unborn? We're treating them as property and as subhumans, and we've done that to a whole other sect of people, So I think that the African American community can certainly empathize more than most of us even can.
Yep. It's a to go back to the point Renee was making earlier about how there's all these black groups springing up, and we hear about them because they call here and they want to get a bulk order of Ma'afas or something, and we're making Ma'afas. We just recently reduced the price on Ma'afa again because we want to get them out as far and wide as we can, and we'll never recover all the cost of it, but we've recovered enough of it now that we can reduce the price, and you can get them for as low as $1.50. And that's what we're selling mostly is case loads and case lots and so forth. But we're starting to see all these little small local black pro-life groups spring up. That's what you were talking about before. And they call and talk to me or talk to you or whatever. This one, Black People Against Abortion. And we just actually contacted this young lady the other day, and she was so excited to hear from us that started this organization. And they basically got started, it sounds like, from having watched Ma'afa and saying, okay, we're gonna start doing something here on the local level. And as we've always said, abortion's gonna end on local levels, not on the national level. Until we win it locally, we'll never win it nationally. We got to win it in the streets, in the local communities. And so that's why this kind of stuff, like you're talking about, is so exciting. To show you how scared the media, the leftists are, and the media, which is basically one and the same, Slate Magazine and Politico Magazine recently published articles, one by a woman named Amanda Marcotte and one by a guy named Randall Palmer. They're arguing that the creation of the pro-life movement was not the result of Roe versus Wade, but was the result of the desegregation laws that started being passed in the 60s. That the pro-life movement was a response to that. We were trying to go backwards in civil rights. This is the most, even the people that support them are saying, I'm not sure I can buy into this. But they're so afraid of this move that we're going to take blacks away from them by showing them what the origins of abortion are, that they're just going to come out and lie through their teeth, make up something out of whole cloth. Does anybody, even the most godless leftist in America, can they honestly make an argument that the pro-life movement was a response to desegregation?
Explain that to me, because it's not even making sense. Break that down.
I can't connect the dots on that one.
I'll give you the articles. It's unbelievable, the trail of logic, if that's what you want to call it, that these people use. And it gets in Slate Magazine and Politico.
Even though abortion kills, how many compared to African American children?
37%, almost 40% of abortion.
So if we're this isn't...
12% of the American population, female population, is black, and they have almost 40% of the abortions. Mm-hmm. In New York City, not New York City, New York State, in New York, for every 10 black women who get pregnant, 6 of them have abortions. Mm-hmm. 6 out of 10 black babies are killed.
More black babies are killed. So really, they're the ones, abortion segregates them from the rest of the population, not
they're the victims of desegregation in this case.
This logic, if you want to call it that, is unbelievable. obviously, every month we have stuff that we don't get to, but I want to talk real quickly, and we're obviously out of time here. We're in a very dangerous point in our country's history. I think everybody recognizes that. The scandals of the Obama administration make Richard Nixon look like a complete lightweight. As those of us who are old enough to have lived through both, none of y'all were, but I did, and I can tell you that I never would have thought that we'd ever see a presidential administration as base and as corrupt as Nixon was. He's a lightweight compared to what we're going through right now. And this deal with the IRS, and by the time this show comes out, there may be more revelations that we don't know about, but this deal with the IRS is really frightening, and we've seen it here in the pro-life movement. You remember, I've told you, and I know you guys have been the targets of some of this stuff too, and I know Troy was when we talked about this. Back during the Clinton administration, we caught these people, not the IRS, but the Department of Justice and FBI's, who we 99% sure was doing it, tapping our phones illegally and opening our mail. Our mail was being opened every day, and we proved it. And we caught them at it, and when we caught them at it, it stopped immediately. And when we brought it up to their attention, it stopped immediately. But you know, during the Watergate, if you watch the Watergate hearings, and that captivated America at that time. Everybody was watching the Watergate hearings when it was going on. The main contention there was not about this break-in at the Watergate Hotel and all that. That was pipsqueak stuff. But what it did is it revealed these other things that were going on in the Nixon administration. And you know, one of the articles in the indictment, the impeachment indictment against Nixon, was that he attempted to use the IRS to punish his political opponents. The enemies list. Everybody remember that? The enemies list, Nixon's enemies list. If you were on that list, the IRS was going to come after you. And that was only an attempt, because at that time the IRS refused to do it. But the argument was, and this was the constitutional argument at that time, that this was so dangerous that you could have a sitting power base in Washington, D.C. that was going to use an entity of the United States government to go after the political enemies. The catch there was that they wouldn't do it. But they're doing it in the Obama administration. This is frightening. And I don't think I think most Americans are upset about it, mainly because they don't like the IRS. But if they would sit and think about what's really going on here, if you have a situation where an administration can be elected and then get one of the agencies of the United States government that he has some control over to go after his political enemies, which is what these people did, these people are not leaders anymore, they're rulers. And that's what Obama is. He is not a leader, he's a ruler. He doesn't know how to lead. All he knows how to do is rule. And this is frightening, what we're seeing happen right here. And, you know, as it relates to the abortion issue, and I think one of the things we need to make sure we understand here, we go back to the origins of Obamacare, which, by the way, Obamacare is a bailout for the American abortion industry. I'm writing a new book, and I detail the reasons that that's true. And I've written about this on my blogs before. It's a bailout for the American abortion industry. That's what it's all about. You remember when this thing first started, they said, well, Obamacare is going to be administered by the IRS. Now, if you're going to have this new gigantic program for socialized medicine, and you're looking around all the government agencies that already exist, why would you pick the IRS? It makes as much sense to pick the Department of Agriculture or the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration as it would be to pick the IRS. Why are you picking the IRS? And I suspect that if an investigation is ever done like it was done with Nixon at the Watergate hearings, if a similar thing is ever done here, you're going to find that they put it to the IRS because they already had control over and contacts in the IRS. But American people better realize how dangerous it is to have one central agency of the American government know all your financial information and all your medical information. If they know those two things about you, they control you. They own you. So why are they hiring these? They're talking about hundreds of thousands of new IRS agents to oversee Obamacare. Why? Why the IRS? Why not just create a new one, a new agency? If you're not opposed to big government, which they obviously aren't, and you're going to hire hundreds of thousands of new government employees, create a new agency. Or put it with the HHS. That would make more sense, wouldn't it? Put it with Health and Human Services rather than the IRS. So people better start connecting the dots here. And I haven't heard anybody talking about this, about that there's got to be some connection for why they chose the IRS. And now all of a sudden we're seeing all these problems with the IRS going after the political enemies of Barack Obama. I promise you there's a connection there. We may never know what it is because the big difference between Nixon and Obama is it's very fundamental. It's very simple. The American media hated Richard Nixon's guts. And, you know, he said later on in an interview with David, what was his name that interviewed him on, I can't remember his guy's name now. Anyway, he said, somebody asked Nixon, did the IRS, did the media hang you? He said, well, in a way, he said, but I gave them the rope that they used. Mm-hmm. Or I provided them with the rope to hang me. So he was admitting that he did things wrong, and then they took the rope and hung him with it. The difference here is Obama's provided much more rope, but the media's on his side. Right. If the media treated Barack Obama the same way they treated Richard Nixon, Barack Obama would probably be in a federal penitentiary right as we speak, if they treated him exactly the same way. But that's not what's happening. So whether all this will ever come out, I don't know. But we're living in very dangerous times, and that's something that we have to, every one of us, be aware of. You know,
the phrase that keeps coming to my mind in all of this is a nation of laws, not of men.
Right.
And what's going on here turns that upside down.
It's upside
Inside
down.
out. It's like what the man says, what the king says, what the ruler says is what happens, never mind the laws and never mind accountability. And we've got to get back to teaching and living that, nation of laws, not of men.
And if we don't, we're done. We cannot survive doing the things that we're doing right now. And I would argue that we don't deserve to survive if we continue to do these things. And it's time to move on and let somebody else run the thing. But we cannot continue going down this trail.
But it always bears repeating what you're saying about how the driving force here really is abortion, and people don't want to face that and don't want to talk about that. But it's true. This Obamacare is a bailout of the abortion industry, and abortion is driving so much of what we are seeing.
Well, in this new thing that I'm writing, that's one of the points I made, that they were willing to totally sacrifice Obamacare if it didn't pay for abortion.
That's right, because that's what it was all about.
They made it crystal clear that we'll give it up. We'll flush this down the toilet before we'll have it not pay for abortion. Yeah. And so abortion is the driving force here, and it always has been. People don't want to hear that. They don't believe it. They think you're nuts when you're saying it. Mm-hmm. But all you got to do is study it and look at it, and you can see that. And
we can say here today, mark our words. This will be clear. Who knows how many years it'll take, but it'll be clear. Mark our words. It's about abortion. Mm-hmm.
All right, we got some other things that are going on. I guess you guys saw that our friends at Live Action did this undercover thing, catching Planned Parenthood teaching what they perceived to be a 15-year-old girl all this weird, perverted sexual things. And, I keep on saying I did a video for YouTube on this particular subject. We've got to get to the time in this country where we say we're not going to turn the future of our children over to this collection of perverts, because that's what these people are. These people are sexual deviants. And, you can say, well, these people have a right to do, yeah, they do. They have a right to do whatever they want to do. They want to go to the hotel and do whatever. That's their business. But we don't turn our children over to them.
Right.
And this stuff that was going on with Planned Parenthood, and then they tried to lie and claim that they had fired the woman, and then Lila and her crew at Live Action was able to call back and talk to the same woman still working there. And we see this stuff all the time. We get things all the time from all these weird things that they are doing with kids. The American people are going to have to wake up at some point and say, we're not going to have these children, we're not going to have these perverts being brought into the school systems and turning our kids over to them.
Like I said before, it would be like having Marlboro come in to talk about lung health. I mean, they're basically filling the pipeline for future abortions or STD screenings or whatever it is that they claim to be offering on that day. But it is something where I think we have to realize the propaganda that's out there. And I think you're going to probably mention the Obvious Child movie, which was basically an infomercial for
the abortion
Planned Parenthood, where they sat down and told you all the things they offer and how much abortions cost and how it doesn't hurt. And you have to realize that this is what our children are being indoctrinated with. And I don't know. To me, if we're going to be pro-education, let's jump on that bandwagon. Let's show them the silent scream. Right. Let's not cut away as soon as the abortion happens. Let's really, truly be pro-education and let people know about fetal development and everything else that they conveniently leave out.
Well, that's kind of the impetus in a different way, but impetus behind the People of Choice website. If these people are going to claim that we're the nutcases, which is what they always do, and of course it gets reinforced by the media, then okay, well then what about these people? How come you're not showing this, that these people are out here dressed up as 8-foot vaginas, out on a public street? And that's mild compared to some of the other, and some of the signs they have as people who go to the website will see. But the media never covers them. Matter of fact, while we're talking about the media, let me just jump ahead here a little bit and talk about some of the things that we're seeing. The bias in the media is, I don't know how these people can even deny it anymore. Here was an article in the Detroit News. 1/3 of all pregnancies in Detroit end in abortion. 1/3. But throughout this article, about every other paragraph, they talk about how this is being driven by a lack of access to birth control and abortion. How abortion rates are being driven higher by a lack of access to abortion. I'm not sure how that works. But anyway, and then they keep throwing in these little tidbits here. National studies show legal abortion is considered a medically safe procedure with few complications. They just throw that into the middle of this article, right? Another one says, then they throw in this thing here about they went out and found a girl that had an abortion when she was 15. Now she's 21. She said, it made me sad. I was still in school and I had to do what I had to do. I was a kid. People make mistakes. And then she says, I'm doing better now. I have a car. I have a job. My daughter, it was her. She helped me get my life back on track because she's had another baby since then. And I guess the daughter doesn't worry that she had a brother or a sister that was killed to make her life better. But they keep on throwing this stuff out here. Health professionals expect the Affordable Care Act to actually reduce abortions by providing greater access to birth control. And then they went on again. Abortion is a safe procedure. The general consensus among physicians is that abortions, even multiple abortions, do not lead to premature birth or other complications with future pregnancy. And then they say, but we would like to reduce the number of abortions. Why? If it's not murder and there's no health consequences and it helps these women have a better life, why would you want to reduce it, right?
In fact, a logical conclusion of that line of thought is not only should you not reduce it, you should increase. You should require it,
right?
Like we've said before in these discussions.
We'd like to reduce the number. There is physical stress, but there is psychological stress as well. Unplanned pregnancy has an effect on plans for education, for work. Women don't take these choices lightly. In other words, it's the stress of the pregnancy, but abortion doesn't cause any stress. This article goes on and just infuriates you when you read it. But one of the most unbelievable was an article that was in Weekly, in New York, in Weekly Standard, reported about a guy who's running for governor out in New Mexico. And New Mexico has a pro-life governor right now, Susana Martinez. And she's obviously Hispanic with a last name like Martinez. Listen to what he said. So I'm asking you for your help. We need to make Susana Martinez a one-term governor. We need to send her back to wherever she really came from. Now, what if a conservative Republican had said something like that about somebody with a Hispanic surname? What would have been the response to that? Media didn't even pick up on it. Nobody said anything about it. Where is the media outrage over this? And, this guy in California that owned the basketball team or whatever said something in the privacy of his own home that got recorded, and now he's being forced to sell his basketball team. Right. Everybody in the country hates his guts. He didn't say anything that was any worse than this right here, right? Right. It's pretty amazing. We're also seeing another thing that Planned Parenthood is doing beyond this thing of just out and out lying about increased abortion rates are caused by lack of access to abortion. Ever how that works. Planned Parenthood sent out a pastoral letter to patients that are having abortions, talking about what that God doesn't necessarily disapprove of your decision to have an abortion. God loves you and is with you no matter what you decide. And they call this a pastoral letter. They're trying to make it appear as if this is almost like a religious experience, like Jenny Perez says in her book, Sacrament of Abortion, where she says, you make your baby holy when you have an abortion because you allow you allow your baby to shed his blood to make your life better. These people are twisted. They're screwed up in the head.
Yeah.
And now Planned Parenthood is sending this letter out. And the reason that they get away with this, Father Frank, I would argue, is that they know they're dealing with people, even if they go to church, who've never heard the pro-life message in church.
That's right.
So they're fair game.
Yep.
If they've never heard this is the first time somebody has given them a pastoral lesson on what abortion is, and it means, oh, it's okay, right?
You know, it goes back to the beginning, doesn't it? When the unborn were still protected in this country, there was those that were trying to change that established a clergy network to
Right.
try to
Right.
try to start to change things and to reach out to those that wanted to have abortions. And this has always been a tactic of the other side. You got the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice and all these other groups.
Yeah,
and
Catholics for free choice.
Yeah, right, exactly. The groups that are take a far more extreme position, by the way, than the individual member churches who sign up for these coalitions. So yes, they are exploiting the weaknesses in the church. They're exploiting the silence in the church,
Right.
and that's why we need to keep working in the churches and on the clergy and say, look, either you're going to preach about this and teach about this, or your people are going to get their pastoral guidance
From Planned Parenthood.
Planned Parenthood.
Imagine that you're getting your pastoral guidance from Planned Parenthood.
Well, you know, this goes back to the Negro Project when
Right.
you know Margaret Sanger was launching that initiative in Harlem in New York. You know, that was one of the major things that she wanted to implement in that project is let's get the clergy on board. And one of her statements, I paraphrase, but she talked about how we don't want the black community to know that we're targeting them, that we're looking to eliminate them, and the way we do that is get the clergy involved.
Right.
And it was a successful thing. And,
Get a few black preachers.
It worked then. It's going to work today.
Yeah, yeah. You know, people who really want to learn more about this terrible abuse of religion, and this is one of the ways, by the way, that people take the Lord's name in vain, is when they come up with these explanations and pastoral, encouragement of abortion, is a book that the National Pro-Life Religious Council put out. I serve also as the president of that group, and it's called Holy Abortion, ? And it is a really good analysis of the religious clothing that these wacky groups put on the killing of children, and it's a really good overview of more of this kind of stuff. Holy Abortion, and people can get it from the National Pro-Life Religious Council.
Good. And does they have a website?
Yes, nprcouncil.org.
Okay, good. We'll put that up on the screen because people need to understand what's going on here. These guys. Here's a good example of this. I got two or three good examples of this. At the risk of appearing predictable, the Bible was and remains the biggest influence on my thinking. I was raised reading it, memorizing passage from it, and being guided by it. Now, who said that?
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton. That's right. What has this woman ever done that indicates to you that the Bible is her guiding document? But this is in a direct response to her being asked about things to do with abortion and things like that. Mm-hmm. And so they're trying to project this image that having an abortion can almost be scriptural, biblical.
Right.
Not almost, it is scriptural, biblical. If you decide this is what you want to do, God will support you in this. That pastoral letter says that. Mm-hmm. If you decide this is the choice you want to make, God will support you in this.
Mm-hmm. I think a very profound point was made that one of y'all said that, there is a void in the church that if they're not speaking about this is what they're going to hear. And I mean, I would almost encourage people to print off that letter from Planned Parenthood, if it's available somewhere online, and send it to your pastor and say, in your silence, this is what people are believing. And I mean, just encouraging them, because this is an opportunity for us to really point out that we understand it's a sticky subject and you don't necessarily want to hurt anybody, but at the same time, you are hurting generations to come who are going to be aborted and their life will be snuffed out because you did not speak up on this issue, and Planned Parenthood did. They should not be shepherding your flock.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good point. And, you could go to the pro-choice peoplechoice.com website and see what kind of people we're talking about, because a lot of that has to do with Planned Parenthood. A lot of those are Planned Parenthood people that are in there. And, we need to be asking these guys, look, somebody is going to educate your flock. And it's either going to be you or it's going to be these people.
That's right.
Now, Who do you want it to be? You got children? You got grandchildren? You got a 10-year-old granddaughter? Do you want to educate her about what Scripture says about abortion, or do you want Planned Parenthood? And look at the people that are in that peopleofchoice.com website and tell me you want to sit your children down in a room with those people. Tell me that you want to do that. I don't believe anybody will tell you that.
You know, there's a simple measuring rod here. You want to tell the difference between true religion and false religion. False religion justifies violence. True religion makes you intervene for the victim.
Right.
It's as simple as that. If any kind of religious message, I don't care how many scripture quotes they want to quote or religious arguments they want to make, any kind of religion or doctrine that will justify an act of violence is a false religion. Right. And true religion, like Scripture says, you go to the side of the widow and the orphan and the poor and the oppressed, and you help them. You don't justify killing them.
You know, another interesting thing, though, is, when we talk about God and we talk about religion and we talk about these are the things that drive us to intervene, like you're saying, they don't want to have that conversation. It's keep your God and your religious views out of my affairs. Don't force it upon me. But when they use it in that angle to support their own, then God is invited in.
Then he's invited in.
Well, a good example that I had this next article I was going to talk about because it relates to this subject. Mary Landrieu, Democratic senator from Louisiana, and claims to be a staunch, observant Catholic, right? Raging pro-abort. She recently made a statement talking about abortion, that the government should stay out of the doctor's office. And yet she's one of the pushers behind Obamacare, right?
Can't have it both ways.
Sure you can if you're one of these liberal Democratic senators and you know the media is not going to call you on it. And I had one of our supporters out there sent me copy of a letter that he had sent to her asking her to explain her support for abortion, her support for Obamacare and all this kind of stuff. And he was astonished that she just sat here and just lied through her teeth in a way that was very easily seen. I mean, as a Catholic, I understand the sincere and devout moral opposition that many people of faith have to abortion and their taxpayer dollars being used to pay for it. However, federal law bans the use of taxpayer dollars for abortions. I support this ban, and the Affordable Care Act continues that approach. I am pleased that the Affordable Care Act continues to ban the use of taxpayer dollars for abortion. She just lies through her teeth because she knows the media will not call her on it. If she thought for one moment that NBC, CBS, ABC, MSNBC, even Fox was going to pick up on this and say, well, wait a minute, you're lying. She wouldn't say these things, but she knows she can say it because she can get away with it. It's unbelievable.
You know, she finally answered the question about this pain-capable unborn child protection act, whether she would vote for it or not, and said no, she would not. And again, you look at what she's saying. Children 20 weeks and beyond, painful dismemberment procedures. You don't even want to protect them from that. And really, every senator needs to answer that question, especially as we approach now the midterm elections. Let that be one of the questions that they are asked in these town hall meetings, in these debates. Do you or do you not support at least protecting babies who can feel pain and are going to be killed by these dismemberment procedures after 20 weeks of pregnancy? If they can't even bring themselves to say that, which most of the American people would say they want those babies protected, then let them be exposed for that.
Right. Yeah. But we've got to, as those of us who are not Catholic don't have this option. But why is the bishop in whatever parish or diocese she's in, why hasn't he excommunicated her? That's a scandal that needs to be addressed.
That's a question we get all the time, as you can well imagine. And, that's why I say to people, listen, you're not a bishop, I'm not a bishop either, but we can raise our voices and we can say, that's why we did that. Remember that letter we did to Nancy Pelosi last year? And we're still getting responses to that, lettertonancy.com, because she did the same thing Landrieu does. They take refuge in their Catholicism. You bring up abortion, you say, let's look at the killing of children, tell me why they shouldn't be protected, and they evade the question by starting talking about all these spiritual things. It's like, no. Religion is not an escape from reality. It makes you face reality. It strengthens you to see the truth. And we've got to, if these disciplinary measures are not being taken, at least we can fill the gap by speaking up and saying, no, you have crossed the line, you're not being honest, and you're not being faithful.
Right, exactly. Somebody needs to start holding these people's feet to the fire.
Yeah.
But like I said, she knows she can lie and get away with it because she knows the government, the media won't call her on it. In England, this is Canadian. A Canadian judge has ordered a 13-year-old girl who is apparently mentally challenged, mentally incompetent. He has forced her to have an abortion. We don't cover a whole lot of things that happen in other countries because we got enough to deal with right here. However, what we have seen over the years is that anything that will happen in another country will eventually come here. Mm-hmm. We've seen this time and time again. We've never seen China do anything that we didn't eventually do. England that we didn't eventually do. And these things are headed our way. And we got to be cognizant of it. And we talked a couple of months ago about the issue, and this was in Canada, where they were taking the bodies of aborted babies and burning them in the incinerator. You remember that? Mm-hmm. To heat the hospital where the baby was being killed.
Right.
And, you say, well, that was Canada. It's not going to come here. Before the next show, we had found the same thing was going on in Washington State. Wasn't it Washington? Oregon. Oregon, right. Yes. So if you're gonna allow legalized abortion, you have to take everything that comes along with it. You get the fruit of the poisonous tree. You get everything that comes along with it.
I think I was shocked to see that there was a man recently in this last week who, part of a plea deal, I guess, for some crimes he committed, agreed to undergo a vasectomy. Like, it was court ordered as part of his plea deal to do that. And the number of liberals and conservatives who are outraged by this, sterilization, and how dare the government say this. But that's exactly what they're doing in Canada. If you're, not only are you aborting the woman's child, but who knows what they have planned as far as sterilizing her in the future. Like, why are we giving the government that type of power? Because we've created an easy path right to it.
And this is another thing that's in Canada, but again, this is on its way. I get really angry with these pro-aborts, of course, on a lot of fronts, but when they go in the media and nobody calls them on it and calls abortion care, this is health care, or we provide abortion care. Put these two words together, abortion care. Who's being cared for? Mm-hmm. And you certainly can't say the woman, because nobody can possibly make an argument that if this is health care, that when the baby's healthier when it's over, and you can't even make an argument that the woman's healthier. She's not healthier when she gets off that table than she was when she got onto it. So how is this health care? Now, in Canada, they're looking at a euthanasia bill, not for babies, but for other people, older people, people that are physically challenged. You know what they're calling it? End-of-life care. In other words, we're going to lethally inject you out of care because we care so much for you. This is health care. And the thing I find so hypocritical here, among many others, is this debate that's raging right now in the country about, and I'm, as y'all know, I'm a virulent opponent of the death penalty. But how many doctors now you're seeing, and the American Medical Association is saying doctors cannot in good conscience participate in a death penalty situation. They can't provide a lethal injection. That's why they get the warden of the hospital, of the prison to do it, because they couldn't get doctors to do it. Because they say an ethical doctor can't participate in the taking of a human life. And then all of a sudden, the same ethical doctor can be an abortionist, right? And provide abortion care. But
I think this is one of those fronts where we might actually be able to reach some of these pro-choice people, because, like the Reagan quote said, that everybody who's for abortion has been born.
Right.
Well, yeah, you got lucky on that one, you made it here, but you're still going to be, this is going to be optional. This end-of-life care can still affect you. And so maybe you need to start reconsidering where you draw the line on this.
Well, and that's a good point. I brought it up here before. Back when Hillary care was being debated, back in the Clinton administration, she was going around the country trying to sell it to various venues. And she was in Michigan, at either Michigan State or University of Michigan, and giving a speech there about it. And it was on C-SPAN, and I watched it that night. Although it's hard for me to stomach watching Hillary Clinton, but I watched it anyway. there was a young lady in the audience when they started taking questions and answers who stood up and asked a really good question, and it was obvious from the way she was asking the questions that this young lady had done her homework. So Hillary wasn't going to be able to smoke something past her. And finally, her question was, Ms. Clinton, we have a situation here. What you're basically proposing is the Canadian system, and Hillary Clinton had already alluded to the Canadian system as kind of a model for what we want to do. And she said, but in Canada, there's all these waits for people, and people can't use their own doctor, and it takes 2 years to get a hernia operation or whatever it might be. And she said, the system is broke, and they're admitting that it's broke, financially broke, and people can't get care. And she said, we're here in Wayne County, Michigan, and at any given time in Wayne County, 30% of the hospital beds are taken up with Canadians who can't get health care in their country.
Wow.
And she said, when you bring that system here, and it's financially bankrupting us, and nobody can get health care, where are we going to go? What country are we going to go to get health care? If 30% of our hospital beds in Wayne County, Michigan, which borders Canada, if they're being taken up with Canadians, where do we go to get health care? And Hillary Clinton made a statement that I wish I had been recording because I'd love to replay it. Maybe somebody has it out there. She said, well, I've looked at the Canadian system, and it's right. You're right. It does have some financial issues that we need to grapple with. She said, but what we have to understand is that Canadians spend 80% of their, I think you see 80%, of their healthcare dollars on patients who are in their last year of life anyway. The key word there is anyway.
So as long as we get rid of those, we'll be fine here.
So
Nobody will have to go to
that's where we're
Mexico
going to
for
start to
healthcare.
cut the budget, right? If 80% of it is on people who are in their last year of life anyway, what she's saying is, then we need to take that away. Now, I want you to think about this. This issue protects itself, and we're going to see this right here. We're already starting to hear rumblings of this in Obamacare. Somebody goes to the hospital, and they've got a problem that's profound. It could be an injury from a car wreck or a motorcycle wreck or a shooting or whatever it might be. What if the tribunal at the hospital decides that this person is in their last year of life anyway? So all we're going to give them is comfort care, like they do with the babies that they abort and they come out alive. Put them in a closet and wrap them up, right? What if we do that? So we don't give this person any health care, we give them comfort care, and sure enough, 30 days later, they die. And you can come back and say, see, they were in their last year of life anyway. Did we want to spend $300,000 on emergency care for this person who was going to live a month in misery?
Right.
Well, they might not have lived a month in misery. They might have lived 25 years not in misery had you given them health care. But you're protected by the fact that they died. That's what we're headed towards. Mm-hmm. That's what government health care means. And we're, like I said, you're seeing it in other countries. Why wouldn't we see it here? And the answer is, we would see it here.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's exactly what we would see here.
But they get away with a lot of this by putting these pretty little names on it. Obamacare, Hillary Care, Life Care, all these different.
Right.
The number one terrorist group in this country, in my opinion, has the name Planned Parenthood.
Right.
And so, I mean, when you look at the word Planned Parenthood, that doesn't seem like some vicious, killing machine. But it is.
But it is.
It is.
It's what Johnny said in Maafa. We found the weapon of mass destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's looking all over the world for it. We found it.
Yeah.
It's the suction machine down at Planned Parenthood. That's the weapon of mass destruction, especially if you're a minority.
Absolutely.
If you're black or Hispanic. And again, going back to the Maafa thing, the thing that Carol and Renee and I worked on that reaffirmed everything that was in Maafa was that report we did, the
Under the
racial
radar.
profiling.
Yes.
No, racial profiling. The other one was the under the
Yes.
radar violence, but the racial profiling in the American abortion industry. And we proved that they're doing it. There is no argument that they're doing it. Anyway, we're completely out of time. Oh, one last thing here. I got to get to dig in at this guy, Paul Ehrlich, which is, all these people posit themselves as intellects. And this guy's been doing it since the 60s. And he wrote a book years ago called Population Bomb.
Right.
And he wrote this in the 60s, talking about the growing problem over expanding populations. And he was saying that in the United States, by the mid-1980s, remember this? Did you ever read it? Yeah. There were going to be food riots in every major city in the United States because people were not going to be able to get enough food by the mid-80s. Now, anybody remember that? No?
These overpopulation prognosticators, some of this stuff is just absolutely hilarious, talking about there'll be standing room only on planet Earth. You know, I mean, it's I mean, we're here in Texas, you know, lots of wide open space.
Lots of land. Yeah, I saw a thing not long ago that you could take every person on the face of the earth and give them like 800 square feet of space, and they could all fit in Texas.
In Texas, that's right.
So, you know, we're not running out of place to put people, you know. But this guy predicted these food riots in every major city in the United States, and that you better be figuring out how to grow your own food and protect your land, because people are going to be pouring out of Dallas, coming into Denton, foraging for food. And, you know, all these old people are foraging around in dumpsters for cat food to eat, cat food that people throw out. And none of this came true. And all the things that he said in that movie and in that book were nonsense, but people still listen to him. Now listen to what he's saying now. He is saying that the population problem, if we don't do something about the population problem and climate change, that we're not going to be able to feed the people that we have. Again, it's food right, but this time we're not going to be rioting to coming out of the cities looking for food. You know what he says we're going to be doing? We're going to be eating our dead. When somebody dies, we won't bury them, we will eat them. That we'll be forced to do that.
Does he write science fiction or actual news?
And listen,
I bet he has a novel
nitwits,
somewhere in a basement.
These nitwits that are buying into all this stuff, they look at him like, oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
We got to make preparations for that. Grandma's going to die next week. We can put her in the freezer.
She's in her last year, so yeah, let's put her in the freezer.
Put her in the freezer, and we can heat her over the weekend, over the summer, or over the winter, or whatever. These people are nuts. I'm telling you, they're stark, raving nuts. But people still listen to them. That's the scary thing. It's not that they are saying these things, but that other people are buying it. That's the problem.
You know, I've always said, and it just becomes more and more clear by all this evidence, someday, and that day will come, when the unborn are protected again and abortion is just a nightmare of the past, people looking back at the whole thing and studying this whole phenomenon are not only going to have a field day, you know, historically, sociologically, but psychologically. The psychologists in generations to come are going to look back at this, and they're going to have a field day analyzing how in the world did
what were these people thinking?
Yeah, right.
You know, let me say something that I've thought about many times that reaffirms your point. I don't know if we've ever talked to you about this before. One of the things that they're going to look back on is that two things occurred concurrently in America. One was a technological advance. We got sonograms, and we could see the unborn child, right? At about that same point in history, we legalized abortion.
Yes.
Right? So, in other words, when you're in the future and you're looking back on this through the prism of history, and you're looking at this and you're saying, wait a minute, for thousands of years, no one had ever seen an unborn child, and yet they protected them in law. But the minute we could start seeing them and knew that what we had said all along, that they're living human beings, the minute we got absolute technological, scientific proof of that, we started killing them by the millions. Yeah. What the hell's wrong with these people? What's going through their mind? What was going through their minds? You know, and I've said many times, you've heard me say this to you, that one day, we won't be around to see it, and certainly not me, but one day, somebody's going to look back on this and have the same revulsion at the things that are going on now that we have when we look back on slavery.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? And, you know, when we were doing the research from off, I've told you this, you know, you start reading this stuff and you hear all these things that you never heard before in history books or anything that you finding out. Now you find these documentation of it. And you think, how could people do that? Mm-hmm. Well, how can we do this?
Well, that's right. We've got to stop short when we find ourselves reading about, you know, the atrocities of slavery, and we start thinking, or we start saying in conversation, wow, I don't understand how they could allow that, or how they could do that, or what were people doing to stop it?
I know
what
I
were
would
people
never
saying?
do that.
Right.
Hold on, just pause it right there, because it's now.
It's happening.
It's now. We are those people.
Right.
And even if you don't look at, you know, things from a scientific perspective, I mean, we have people who will, you know, lie in front of bulldozers to save trees and lizards. And I mean, I just saw a story last week where a guy went to the water park in Houston, Texas, and his dog was in the car with the windows down. And this woman took a picture of it and sent it out on social media. And within 30 minutes, people were there with hammers ready to break the windows. The authorities arrested this guy. And, you know, I saw this passion for life in these animals and trees and things of that sort.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the unborn, there's absolutely no connection. You do not see that same level of value for life. And that's something that even if you don't look at it from a scientific perspective, just looking at some of the things that we're passionate about in this nation today, and there's no connection to the unborn.
I think what I saw was so scary, and I know we're out of time, but that I alluded to when I went and saw Obvious Child. I went to a free screening so I could review the movie, and it's being touted as an abortion romantic comedy. And when I'm in the movie, it was a funny, witty movie. It pulled people in. It was interesting to watch. But you ultimately know this ends with her killing a child, like her child.
Right.
And that's not given a lot of credence in the movie. And people are laughing at these punchlines. At one point, she's a comedian. She comes out of the bathroom, and her friend says, you know, she's about to go up on stage. She goes, oh, go out there and kill it. And the girl makes the joke, oh, no, that's tomorrow morning. And you got this kind of groan from the audience that went into a laughter. And I just remember sitting there and thinking, like, I am surrounded by people who would have absolutely bought into, you know, Nazi Germany. Like, this is complete propaganda that makes light of human death. And at the end of the film, they were applauding this movie. And these are the same people putting out like the Sarah McLachlan crying commercials about dogs and tree huggers and all this. And yet, how are you missing something so obvious as killing human beings to the point where you're going to applaud it because you are that brainwashed and desensitized?
Well, you know, we have the video, I mean, the audio, CD of the partial birth abortion.
I was just thinking about the same thing. Yeah.
That's shown at the NAF convention, National Abortion Federation convention. And we have the audio of that and him describing what's going on. We're pulling the baby out. We're jamming the scissors in the back of the baby's head, and you can see his legs jump and all this kind of stuff. And this was McMahon doing this. And I think Tiller was there. But anyway, they're showing this, and you can hear the audience sometimes making some kind of reaction, oh, that's interesting, or something like that. When it was over, they all burst out in applause.
Yeah.
They had, have you not listened to that? We haven't.
No, I don't think I could stomach that.
I wrote a commentary on that called Applause from Hell.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we've got a video called Fire and Ice. Remind me and I'll get you a copy.
It just makes you, I mean, feel like you are surrounded by pure evil.
You are surrounded by pure evil. You are surrounded by it. Yeah. And these people know what they're doing. Don't, you know, it's like Obama. Everybody says, well, he's just a raging incompetent. No, he's not. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. And we can't give them a pass by just saying, oh, they don't know what they're doing. They're not smart. They're, you know, no, that's not true. We have to recognize, and it should be the Christian community that recognizes this before anybody else, but often we don't. There is simply a fact. It is simply a fact that there is evil in the world. And we just don't want to acknowledge that. And there is evil in this world. And Scripture tells us that. Who's the prince of this earth? Who do we know that to be? There is evil here. So we have to quit being so naive that we dismiss these people's evil as just simply, oh, they don't know. Like it's our fault because we haven't educated them well. Then we can give them a pass on their evil. Yeah. No, we can't. We're out of time. Thanks for filling in, Leroy. As usual, you do
good to be here
a
again.
Great job. And then next month now,
I'll be
out of pocket.
I'll be on my speaking tour, but we'll be back the next month.
Yeah, and so we're going to have our old buddy Johnny Hunter is going to be here to take your place next month.
Good.
And you know, if he does good, maybe we want to bring you back at all. Maybe I'm sure that's what Johnny's.
No. I'll be knocking down the door to come back.
We look forward to that. Good show there, Rennie. And you too, Destiny, The Way of Suffering, De La Rosa.
Right back at you.
Right. Thanks. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this month. Thanks for joining us. And remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing is going to stop. We'll see you in August.